Turning to page 19 of the calendar, House Bill 1871, a bill to amend and reenact multiple sections of the Code of Virginia relating to student and school employee conduct, bullying. Report from the Committee on Education with a substitute.
The gentlewoman from Richmond City, Ms. McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the committee substitute.
The question is on adoption of the committee substitute. As many as favor that motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The substitute is agreed to. The gentlewoman from Richmond City.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since 2002, Virginia school boards have been required to include bullying as part of character education and to include it as prohibited behavior in the student code of conduct. However, there is no definition of bullying in the code. Last year, the Department of Education released a study of the nature and effectiveness of Virginia School Division's anti-bullying policies. One of their recommendations was to have such a definition. House Bill 1871 puts a definition of bullying in the code that has been agreed to by all of the education stakeholders, including the Governor's School and Campus Task Force, the Virginia Department of Education, School Boards Association, superintendents, principals, VEA, and the Family Foundation. It also requires the Board of Education to develop model anti-bullying policies and policies to help deal with employee-to-employee bullying. Hope it will be the pleasure of the House to engross the bill and pass it to its third reading.
Shall the bill be engrossed and passed to its third reading? As many as favor that motion.
Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from Manassas, Mr. Miller.
Mr. Speaker, will the gentlelady rise for a question?
Will the gentlewoman yield?
I yield.
Gentlewoman yields.
Mr. Speaker, I'd ask the gentlelady that I really don't intend harm for the bill. I do have concerns. In lines 75 through 78, there's some language that says unwanted behavior that is intended to harm, intimidate, or humiliate the victim. And although this will sound a little far-fetched, I see how schools have overreacted under certain guidelines. And my concerns would be in a football game between two high schools in a school district, the object of many of the players is to intimidate and humiliate their opponent. And in humiliation, I mean by beat them down in the performance of their play in a football game. Now, I know it sounds extreme, and I'd ask the gentlelady, could schools start overreaching the way they do now? If, for instance, I read on the internet yesterday a 6-year-old brought a toy plastic squirt gun accidentally in his backpack and was under threat of suspension for 6 days. You see of students who bring a couple Advils in their backpack, and it's against the school policy to bring any medication, and because a high school student had 2 Advils in their backpack, they get suspended. There are certain administrators that do not participate in sports that work in our school systems, and I could see certain school board employees seeing the type of intimidation you may see on a football field or a basketball court as a direct offense written in this code here. Can the gentlelady say if this would prevent something like that from happening in sports programs?
Mr. Speaker, I would answer the gentleman in 2 parts. First, until we had the bill from the gentlelady from Chesterfield that we passed out of this House, I think yesterday, the policies that the gentleman refers to of suspending students for having a water gun or for Advil was mandated by state law, was not necessarily an overreach by those localities, but I think we've addressed that problem. Specifically to the language, if you look at line 77, it says, is repeated over time or causes severe emotional trauma. We also try to address the scenario he outlines by saying it doesn't include ordinary teasing, horseplay, argument, or peer conflict. I don't think, as the law is right now, with no definition of bullying at all, a school division could, in fact, include in a policy something that would include the scenario the gentleman outlined. I think this definition was looked at by all of the stakeholders to get at what all of us would consider bullying that happens in the classroom, not what the gentleman is referring to.
Mr. Speaker, one further question.
Will the gentlewoman yield?
Yes.
Gentleman yields.
Perhaps not on the, and perhaps on the football field between 2 opposing teams that may only see each other once a year, that would not be repeated and over time. But how about intramural basketball within a high school system, where where two teams are playing against each other, and it happens several times a week in the gym class. Again, my concerns would be the type of reaching that we've seen with either medicines and or toy, guns or toy knives. High school basketball players, even intramurals, can get quite aggressive with each other, and quite often it's verbally. And again, an administrator who's never partaken in sports, I think, could reasonably say that could cause severe emotional trauma, and they would also reasonably say that this isn't ordinary teasing or horseplay. They may find it very offensive, but it may be very regular on the basketball court.
Mr. Speaker, I would answer the gentleman. I think that the scenario that he outlines would fall under the definition of peer conflict. I also believe that when the Board of Education develops their model policies, they can provide the guidance that the gentleman would prefer to include. But again, this definition was worked on over a long period of time with stakeholders that would include people who understand what happens on the football field and in the mural field. This definition is designed to get at if you have someone who, wherever they are in the school, consistently, repeatedly, with the intent to harm or humiliate on a regular basis over and over and over an individual for whatever reason. It is not intended to get at what everybody understands happens on the playing field, in intramurals, or in the school system.
Gentleman from Iowa White, Mr. Morris.
Mr. Speaker, will the gentleman yield for a question?
Will the gentlewoman yield?
Yes.
Gentlewoman yields.
My question, Mr. Speaker, my question would be, does this allow the school board to cover bullying as cyberbullying?
Yes.
And, Mr. Speaker, further question.
Will the gentlewoman yield?
Yes.
Gentlewoman yields.
So my understanding is that since it also covers cyberbullying, it gives the school board greater authority to suspend individuals for Facebook posts that occurred off of school property. Isn't that true?
No, sir, Mr. Speaker. This issue came up in the committee. There was extensive discussion about it. This would not give the school board any additional authority other than what they already have today. Today, they cannot regulate free speech that happens outside of the school. What they can regulate is if that free speech then causes, well, the gentleman sat down, so. Now I forgot what I was saying. If that free speech then leads to activities in the school that would fit the definition of bullying, then the schools could or would take action. But that's under current law now. This bill would not change that.
Shall the bill be engrossed and passed to its third reading? Those may favor that motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. Bill is engrossed and passed to its third reading.